believe we're on.
We're on, yes. It's Monday. Welcome back, everybody. After what I hope was a good weekend. Joe Chaffee, Fios 1 News, Long Island, and Fios 1 News, New Jersey.
And Joe Rayo, Fios 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley. And Daniel Kirby, first on the list to join.
He rode his canoe just in the Blue Ridge Mountains, just in time to make the show, and we see a few people jumping on board now. I'm going to start tonight, Joe, on a slightly humorous fashion note.
Okay.
Okay. So, you I don't know if you realize this, but usually when you have shoes on, they're both the same, right? Wait, now you gotta look. I didn't realize this till I got into work today. And I did put it up on Instagram, and it's up on my Facebook page on Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. But yes, somebody got dressed in the dark. I was channeling Helena Bonham Carter, who usually shows up at the Oscars, and she looks as if she got dressed in her closet in the dark. And then as an added touch, she takes a blowtorch to her hair. I didn't quite do that, but I have a pair of black sneakers and a pair of black shoes, and I purposely thought I made sure that I had both the same. I was supposed to have the black shoes on, and, well, that's what I did. And if I hadn't, you know what, I didn't even realize it. I felt a little weird. It felt a little strange, but I've been working with two different shoes on all day.
And you haven't felt, I mean, you had to.
I did when I got out of the car, and I thought, it's just, my imagination. And then I was walking down the hallway, and I thought, you know what, this doesn't feel right. And I looked down, and sure enough, there it was. So, it's a Monday when you grab...
I give you credit for... Because this is something that nobody out there in cyberspace would have known anything about, but you...
That I wear shoes?
That you have two different types of shoes today, and you brought it off. At least you didn't put, your right on your left and your left on your right or something.
Well, that's true. But then I think I might have noticed the difference a bit faster. All right, so let's move on to the fashion faux pas and go on to Hurricane Willa, which is, this was a satellite picture I grabbed this afternoon, Joe. It was really impressive here at this point. It was a Category 5, top winds 160 miles an hour. And by the way, there was an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft en route to investigate. And when it got into one of the outer bands, the plane got struck by lightning. Oh. And they suffered damage to their equipment, so they couldn't get in. They had to turn around and go back. So there's no recon out of this. This is based strictly on the satellite. It's come off that high a bit. Top winds are down to 150 based on satellite estimates, but it briefly achieved Category 5 status. And here's a tight satellite loop of it. Looks like it's going through an eye wall replacement cycle. It's on the Pacific side of Mexico, and we bring it up because this moisture is going to wind up into Texas, which is eventually going to wind up in a developing Gulf low, and that may eventually wind up along the East Coast sometime this weekend.
Right. This is upcoming weekend. We may very well see copious amounts of rainfall, and as you just pointed out, some of this may be attributed to the moisture from Willa. I actually I didn't know her personally, but my sister, I was telling you before we started here, in elementary school, there was a girl by the name of Willa Axelrod. What an unusual name.
Yeah.
But you don't often meet a Willa. But, and it's an unusual name for
And by the way, in the Pacific, unlike the Atlantic, in the Pacific they have a Y and a Z name. So Yolanda is the Y storm, and Zeke is if they get to Z. Because I was asking that question in the Atlantic, they stop at W, and I was wondering whether, are they going to go to the Greek alphabet? Do they have like an emergency, A, B, C list that they go to when it spills over? Because I don't remember the last time it spilled over on the Pacific side.
I don't remember either.
The Atlantic side, I was in, was it in 05?
I think it was 05.
05.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember it doing it on the Pacific side, which is kind of odd because the Pacific usually gets more storms than the Atlantic anyway. But they haven't really gotten over the top. that's the forecast going in between Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta, where they've already had some mudslides near Puerto Vallarta reported this evening. And there's the track. I mean, it's going to be basically a remnant low with a lot of tropical moisture, but it is going to head over to the east. Now, short range, Joe. Not much happens here. We have a weak cold front coming through, and that's it for the week. It's really going to be a matter of temperatures.
And in terms of precipitation tomorrow, just a few hit or miss showers, and the further north and west you go, the better your odds of seeing a few of those. But for Long Island and maybe coastal New Jersey, it may just be a lot of cloud buildup.
Yeah, I left them out. I mean, I sort of said that maybe if there's a brief shower for a really, really short period of time, but I didn't think it was really, any big deal. And then after that,
it's just a large, high-pressure system which will keep us dry through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I know some of the models were suggesting that we might actually go through a good part of Saturday, but the European this afternoon was very robust and even had that wet weather arriving here early in the day on Saturday.
Right.
Kind of suggestive of a completely washed out weekend, but we'll have a better handle.
The new GFS has kind of gone along with this now, just picked up a bit of speed. Yeah, and the other thing, before we get to that, the other thing I was thinking of is, when you look at the surface here, Joe, this is something that reminds me in the wintertime where you don't get this set up too often, but when you have a high that goes to your north like this and you've got pretty much a straight northerly wind, or a north-northwest wind screaming down the Hudson Valley. I wonder whether Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and Thursday night, Friday morning, there haven't been that many places. There aren't that many places left that have evaded the 32-degree mark around the warmer urban centers and the area immediately surrounding it. This air mass might take more of those out, I think, and that we may wind up having perhaps temperatures down close to freezing, close to New York City or to Newark, Jersey City, Hoboken, Nassau County, etc.
It's quite possible. We could finish out the week on that high should bring brilliantly sunny weather on Friday, and of course that gets everybody all excited with the weekend upon us. And then what happens over the weekend? We have that moisture from Willa and a developing storm off the southeast coast, which is pushing northward, and that could mean...
this is 2 a.m. Saturday, by the way.
This is a grim outlook. Yeah,
this is 8 a.m. Saturday, so it is faster with the low, and it's also on this run. The track of the low is closer to the Europeans' track, which was far to the west of the GFS on the prior run.
And of course, you noticed those shades of salmon and purple and
I was going to try to ignore that, but look here. I said this on my YouTube show tonight. I'm going to say it again. This is a setup on the surface that if this were a month from now, snow lovers would probably be able to get somewhat excited about it. If it was 2 months from now, snow lovers would probably be able to get very excited about it. But it's not. It's the 22nd of October, and this weekend is the 27th and 28th. You're going to have a perfect setup at a loft. And, I'm trying to think back to the times when it did happen in October, back in the 2011. But if I remember that correctly, that was a very, very strong upper air system with a kind of a tight surface low, and you had the dynamics there sitting over southern New England,
right? And
I don't know that you have that. I mean, you do have a cold aloft, but this almost looks more like bleeding cold air down from the north. And I mean, I don't know. For elevated areas in upstate New York and up into central and northern New England, yeah, I could see it. But I don't know about down our way here.
There's more of a shallow, cold air mass.
Than anything else.
Yeah, and take it from me, I remember that storm where I live up in Putnam Valley, which is right over the Westchester border, and my elevation is about 450 feet. We had 14 or 15 inches of heavy wet snow, and the interesting thing about that, Joe, in the late afternoon hours of the 29th of October 2011, you could step outside of my front door, and every so often it sounded like there were hunters out in the woods shooting at deer or shooting at turkey. Those weren't hunters. Those were branches and limbs of trees that were snapping off because the snow was so tremendously heavy. And there was still a lot of foliage left on the trees, and branches, trees, limbs, they were breaking off left and right. It was just an incredible situation, especially since we hadn't even gotten to Halloween yet in 21.
Oh, yeah. Well, what I did was I broke down the upper air a bit today, and so we can understand exactly what's going on. And you've got this blocking ridge out in the Atlantic that stretches from the Azores to about Greenland. This is for Friday morning. And you've got an upper low in eastern Canada with a trough that runs down in the Atlantic along 60. So that is what's really bringing the cold air here for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then, of course, you've got the energy coming out of the southwest, or from our southwest, with a trough that's running down the middle Mississippi Valley to the Gulf, and another system upstream. And the thing is, this is one of those delicate balances where you got to get that upper low to our northeast out of the way to allow this next trough to lift up.
Right.
And it seems as if that's what the models are doing. The ridge weakens just enough so that that upper trough moves just enough so that those next two short waves start interacting with each other. And there lies the big question, because I looked at you look at the GFS, and there's plenty of energy here, but the streams kind of stay separate. The second one back up to the north looks like it kicks. This was on the old run, not the new run. So it wound up, kind of kicking it along to the northeast, and you took a surface low southeast of Cape Cod, and we probably wouldn't get a whole heck of a lot out of this. But the Europeans' view was something a bit sharper, a bit more of a phased look, if you want to put it that way. And you've got the flow along the east coast that's more south-southwest, so the surface low comes out of the Gulf, off the Georgia coast, and then just kind of rides it up just along the immediate coastline. And when we look at the afternoon GFS, I think we'll probably find that it looks closer to the European.
Well, I got the impression from the European that the wetter of the 2 days is Saturday. Sunday, it was kind of suggesting that there might actually be some pokes of sunshine, some residual showers, and then there was a second wave of moisture coming in for Monday of next week.
Well, here it is. If you look at even the GFS kind of has the upper feature here. If you want to make an argument, if you want to even discuss the possibility of some wet snowflakes, I wonder whether if it was going to happen, it would happen on Monday with that kind of the very, very cold air aloft getting involved, and, some kind of tight little surface low. That might be something to look at down the road, but we're talking long shots here. We're talking a week from now. So why don't we'll probably, if this is going to happen, we'll address it toward the end of the week.
And look at that. Even if you're down, for example, let's say next Monday in someplace like Atlanta.
Yes.
You might have some rather significant northwesterly winds and rather tight gradient even down there. So you may get you were down there, you would be seeing a sweep of unseasonably cool weather. They'd probably be complaining down in Atlanta.
Oh, they may very well be.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, the temperature may actually get to 60 degrees.
Well, it might get. It can sometimes get pretty cold down there into the southeast in northwestern Georgia and in western North Carolina, western South Carolina. Just want to take a look what kind of temperatures they have. Now this is for Monday afternoon. I mean, it's got low 60s, which for them, and then in the mountains in western North Carolina, it's got 40s and 50s. This is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it gets down there pretty chilly at night, down in the low 40s.
Oh yeah,
I can see it, and of course for us, behind this is going to be also. It looks like we're going to have chilly weather right into Halloween, it seems.
Right.
Until the weather pattern starts doing some adjusting, maybe in the first few days of November.
Well, the Climate Prediction Center for the 6 to 10 day outlook has 60% probabilities across much of the Northeast of below normal temperatures. And in the 8 to 14 day outlook, those below normal temperatures modify to closer to normal. So this may be one shot that they're calling for on into the end of the weekend, into early next week, and then during next week, a gradual trend back toward maybe not necessarily above normal, but
maybe back to normal. Well, I punched up the jet stream for Halloween, so because we already know what's going to happen over the weekend. I mean, it looks like that ridge in the Atlantic breaks down a bit and things start moving along. Also, it looks like a trough tries to go down in the west, at least temporarily, so that we get a little bit of ridging here, kind of a flat ridge in the eastern part of the United States. You also wonder, in my mind, too, whether there might be some late season tropical development in the Caribbean if this sets up this way. But, we're almost into November. I mean, it kind of looks like the upper air goes into a bit of a transition as we go into the first week or so of November. It looks like things are changing around a little bit.
Yeah.
Where it winds up in all the math, I don't know. But the pattern that we're in now, maybe taking a breather. I would just caution, though, that beyond day 7 or 8, in the long range, it becomes highly suspect in terms of the upper air. And we could turn around and look at this tomorrow and see something totally different. I mean, just going back one run from earlier, it's not quite the same. There's still a bit of a connection here from Canada going into the first days of November. So you want, I wouldn't put too much stock in whatever you see there beyond the 8th or 9th day.
As we get into the late fall and winter season, and if we get into especially a fast flow, it is very difficult after even just 5 or 6 days to pin down something specific, because everything, again, is moving so very, very quickly. To try to make a specific forecast beyond 5 or 6 days in the wintertime is sometimes well nigh impossible.
We can go to the board now and take a couple of questions. So, as Jimmy Zindel said, as long as they're not 2 left shoes, that's correct to go with my 2 left feet. Jason Kaplan, nice to meet you, by the way, Jason, last week at the Springfield Library. And by the way, I may have another Jersey library talk coming up shortly. And if maybe tomorrow I'll be able to say something. I just got to finalize a few things. But he asked, do you think that this nor'easter will be a run-of-the-mill, or will it be more intense?
Well, I haven't even said anything on air about nor'easter. I hate to use that word.
Yeah, I didn't either, really.
And, I've heard maybe, as they say, a coastal disturbance. And whether or not it's going to be of significance, well, that's going to be dependent upon how close the track is, how fast or how slow.
One of the things to watch out for, Joe, is the fact that it is happening faster, and we do have a full moon on the 24th. Wednesday. I think the peak tides are Friday, the 26th.
Right.
So the tides on Saturday will be running high. So if this comes in faster, there could be some coastal flooding issues regardless, sure, because you've got the big high to the north and lower pressures down to the south. So that's something to consider with regards to Saturday, that there could be some coastal flooding issues.
The big high is going to do its level best to try to block this off. And, of course, the low, if it's robust enough, coming up into that high, the gradient is going to tighten up. So whether or not we get a tremendous amount of rain or even a small amount of rain, I still think those winds are going to be rather strong. And as you mentioned, with the full moon, and usually take a lag of a day or two after the full moon for the highest tides. So, yeah, we're looking at, along coastal areas, maybe a rough go come Friday into the weekend.
Let's see. When was the last time a Hurricane Hunter plane got damaged in a storm? Oh, God, I don't you know what? I don't know. That's a good question, Jason. I don't remember. I know it's happened. It's in my memory that's happened a couple of times where they'll send flights out and something happens and it has to turn around and comes back. But I guess outside of just making note of it happening like tonight, where it was on the discussion, I wouldn't even know where you would be able to find the answer to that question.
It's funny, and now I can't believe it. I'm thinking in my head, this is like, I'm talking about 25 or 30 years ago, PBS, they had a special on Nova. Do they still have that show anymore?
Yeah, I think so.
They did a whole hour on hurricane activity, and they actually had a camera crew in one of the planes, the reconnaissance planes. This was Gilbert, which had a very, very low atmospheric pressure.
885, I think it was.
And they were talking to the pilot of the plane and telling him what they wanted him to do, and he was like, okay.
Yeah.
He was,
Well, that's why you won't ever see me on there. Jason, as far as, specifics with it, it's hard to say at this point. I mean, I would think that if it's Saturday to Saturday night, there'll probably be two high tide cycles that would be at risk, but definitely worth paying attention to as we go through the week to see how this whole thing evolves. now, of course, we get the general argument that breaks out every time we do this and snow comes onto the equation because everyone's focused on this El Nino thing, Joe. So,
Yeah.
apparently the gossip mill is churning about Kim Kardashian, Justin Timberlake, and the fact that El Nino will cause a warm winter. Those are the top 3 trending things on Twitter, okay?
You and I did not get a chance to see when it came out on October 18th, the official statement from the Climate Prediction Center. I did get a chance to look at it like later that night, and boy, I tell you, a lot of people are saying, oh well, that's great if we don't have a cold winter, if it's a warmer than normal winter, and if we have less. It doesn't necessarily mean, and of course, the last 2 years we've seen this above normal temperatures here in the Northeast for the last couple of winters, and we still ended up getting clobbered with more than our fair share of snow.
Well, what good was that forecast last year anyway? When they basically, and I'm not the only one who felt this way, but they came into October, they just basically mailed it in, the forecast.
Right.
Neutral El Nino, this is what we're going for, and that was that. And they didn't take into consideration all the other things that happened. And in fact, last winter, the correct forecast would have been to expect extreme volatility in both directions, coupled with a warm, a bitter cold first half in the east, followed by a very warm second half, and then ending with a 4-week storm period. Hindsight is 2020. You'll get all your forecasts right if you do it that way. But my point is, it's their forecast basically looked at El Nino. There's a weak El Nino, therefore we're forecasting this, and that's it. Well, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but there are so many other factors in the atmosphere that are in play that what value? I mean, to me, I don't know what value that forecast has.
Well, as I said before, you can have in the overview, you can have a climatologist come to you after a winter and say, "Look, see, it was above normal. This is an above normal winter, warmer than normal temperatures. Look at this, we hit a record high here, here, here." But if you have just even one massive snowstorm, that's going to tint the whole winter for everybody.
Of course. Well, that happened in 15-16. We had our biggest snowstorm on record for a lot of places in the middle of January, and at a couple of other snow events during the month of February, and what was overall a pretty warm winter. Jason Schaefer, don't say who it is, but I'm dying to know. So private message me, okay, on this. Jason said he heard a particular meteorologist this morning talking about day 7 and calling it a coastal storm associated with Hurricane Wilma.
Willa.
Willa. Don't put it on this conversation. Message me. I'm dying to know. Because we don't want to publicly shame that person. It's much more fun to shame him privately. Barbara Bender, you make a point, by the way, with the leaves. I've already noticed a little bit of color turning on Long Island, and I think the cooler weather is having a bit of impact, and all the rain that we've had.
Right.
So I wonder. I really think we're going to have more of a normalized autumn in terms of the color change and everything else.
Well, on my Facebook page, Joe Rayo Weather, I have been posting maps from the Foliage Network these last couple of weeks, and a lot of people have been coming to me and saying, they're saying that we have high color here, and there is hardly any color. One of a good friend of mine, Nancy Reef, went up to Rochester, New York. Now, according to the map up there, they're in like high color. He said, "Joe, everywhere I looked, it was like mostly green. Even in the
so
Catskills."
where are these reports coming from? Perhaps the tourist bureaus wanting to make sure people come up for the weekends.
That might very well be.
Just a thought. Not that there ever would be a conspiracy like
even
this.
somebody like a friend of mine, Mark Rosengarten, said, "I was in the Catskills this weekend, and there was hardly any color at all up there." I'm supposedly on these maps. I'm in the high color zone where I live up in Putnam Valley. Well, guess what? I would have to say the high color is green. 99%
versus
of my
off green. Well, you know what? We've got Timothy Veltman. If he's still on, Timothy, you're up in you're up close to Albany. What kind of color? What kind of color on the foliage do you have up there? We'd be curious about that. So if he's still on, he will respond. If not, we're going to get the answer to that question. Daniel Kirby, will the winds around the low pressure bring in cold air over my area, and will the mountains in my area cause an upslope situation, making it even colder? You're in West Virginia. You're on the in Western Virginia by the Blue Ridge Mountains. You've got all week where you're not going to have much of anything happening. Let's let's get a little bit closer to see how the models handle it. Sometimes funny things can happen in those Blue Ridge Mountains in situations like this along the East Coast, and with this cold upper feature that's getting involved. I did see so we'll address it later. Kelly Flexer wants to know if we ever disagree on a forecast.
No.
No, I can't remember the last time.
When I have a question, I say, so would you be thinking about? He says, yeah, I'll buy that or whatever like that. We've never really had any kind of.
Whose baby is that? What's your angle? I'll buy that. Well, it's actually Joe. Joe and I. We pretty well see things eye to eye. For example, on a typical winter forecast, for example. Joe will say 3 to 5, and I'll say 4 to 6, and 4 to 6 will show up on the map. He agrees with me completely.
We have a good, not just the two of us, but we have a great weather team. We have Addison Green, Brittany Borer, we have Brian Fitzgerald, and Jeffrey
Manson. And Brian Fitzgerald, who is with us this week, by the way.
Yes.
I'm teasing because he took some time off. Timothy says the wind is blowing them down up where he is. The color is pretty drab.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of leaf drop. They have two maps, and I rarely ever use the leaf drop map. I will say one thing. Maybe I don't have all that much color where I live, but there's a lot of leaf drop that has
right.
That has
well,
taken
Carol
place.
Bender says she went apple picking in Claverack. I don't know where that is, but no color change at all. Do you know where that is?
No.
Upstate?
No.
Yeah, of course, Angry Ben is catching herring. Nice, Ben. Okay.
By the way, when I was much younger, not even in the business yet, I used to tune in. The term is DXing, on the AM radio band, and you talk about West Virginia, and probably one of the they call 50,000 watt clear channel stations flamethrowers because they be heard in like 37 states. And as soon as the sun sets at night, tune to 1170 on your AM dial, and you'll hear one station booming in. That's WWVA Wheeling, West Virginia.
Right.
And I used to listen to Wheeling, West Virginia, just on the hour to get their weather forecast and their temperatures and whatever. To find out, it's like a whole different world down there sometimes.
Steve Rinaldi, wrap your fig trees, okay? Because I'm thinking at least up in if you're up in northwest New Jersey, wrap them. If you're anywhere in away from the warmer urban centers, I would wrap them up because if not Wednesday night, Thursday night, you probably might see some 20s away from the warmer urban centers. It would not be a surprise.
Yes.
Just trying to see. Well, William Uber's got no worms in his apples. It's outside of Saratoga. Okay, that's pretty far up.
Yeah,
The colors were pretty drab even up there.
Yeah.
And here we are at the 22nd of October, and it hasn't changed. They're going to just go through they're just going to get all blown down.
I think it's
The Tourist Bureau.
No, but I think also it's the main reason we're getting such drab reports is that I think we had too much humidity, too much rain, and
well, that could be too.
I
never quite got to get a grip on what works better. I know dry doesn't usually work.
Right.
Long.
You have to just enough moisture, and just enough this, and just enough that, and the colors. Let me tell you something, Joe. I lived up in Putnam Valley for 16 years now. 16 autumns have come and gone, and in my opinion, I've yet to see the brilliant, dazzling array of colors that was promised me when I was moving up in that area. I probably saw a lot. I'll tell you what, I saw a lot more color when I would have traveled, let's say, on the Wantor Parkway, with the trees lining both sides. There was a few days that I found that more spectacular than anything I've seen so far up in my sector of the Hudson Valley.
Mike Armando, don't put it on the chat though. But if you want to private message me as to who this person was, so we could show it, I can shame him privately, or her. He says he also heard the same Met saying that ocean temps are warm. Willa will be a tropical system if it comes up the East Coast.
There's some people who just look for trouble. or like to stir the pot, so to speak,
Yes.
well in advance, and then they conveniently, when it doesn't happen, it's conveniently like glossed over.
Right.
Let's move on.
Exactly. Next. And speaking of moving on, it's time for us to move on as well. So I will be on at the top of the hour, FiOS 1 News, Long Island and New Jersey.
And I will be on FiOS 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley. Not Upper Hudson Valley, but Lower Hudson Valley.
Right. And definitely not Middle Hudson Valley.
Right.
Okay. All right. So Joe and I will be back tomorrow at 9:15. If you want more, you could take a look at my YouTube live stream I did tonight on my YouTube channel, and there's also more weather on the long range. If you want to check that out, you can go to my platform on Patreon, and there's a link at the descriptor to this live stream, and I'll also put it here at the bottom of the chat.
Thank you, Dennis. Dennis Cassia, my friend, says Nova is still on.
Awesome.
I just don't get a chance to watch TV in the evening as I used to, since I'm working in the evening. So
yeah, neither do I. I watch very little television. Yeah. You got anything coming up this week that you want to tell the folks about?
No, nothing. It's just a bland week. The sad, bit of sadness is that sometime later this week, the tree man is coming to my house to unfortunately take down a few trees which were the victim of the gypsy moth the last couple of years. One of them is this gigantic oak tree, which is easily 60 feet high.
Wow.
Never. We were kind of hoping against hope during the spring that it was going to start, budding and showing leaves, but it never did. So.
Oh, you just reminded me, by the way, speaking of which, this morning I had a pretty nice sized hawk on my swimming pool cover.
Okay.
Well, the hawk figured out I got a brand new cover on for my pool, and it's really heavy duty, and it's also brown. I didn't even see the hawk. He was perfectly camouflaged until he took off. And he's hanging out near my house because he's figured out that brown cover is perfect camouflage for him. He could just kind of sit there and wait for the animals to just basically walk up into his mouth.
Oh, dear. So who said you have to travel to far-reaching land? Just go to Joe Chiaffi's backyard.
Well, the hawk was there, and normally my backyard is filled with birds and squirrels, and they were all gone. Oh. So they knew to vacate.
Oh, there's something else too. My wife made a jack-o'-lantern out of a pumpkin over the weekend, and she scooped out all that stuff, that orange stuff that's inside or whatever. She had it on a tray. He said, "Get rid of this. Throw it in the woods." We have a flat rock on my property, not in the woods, but really plainly visible. And I said, why not? I plopped all of that on the flat rock. I'm thinking that maybe the deer or the birds or the squirrels would come after. Here it is 3 days later, it's still sitting out there. I don't understand this. And it's so brightly colored, that bright orange color. I figured that thing was going to be gone in like less than a day.
And it's still there?
The wildlife has not gone after it. And I just...
That's odd.
They don't like pumpkin? I don't know.
It could be. I know squirrels like to go into those things and just scoop out all the seeds.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Well, maybe they're more partial to apple.
Well, guess what?
I never liked pumpkin.
My wife gave me a dictated to me. She said, if that's still there tomorrow...
Guess who's cleaning it up?
Guess who's cleaning it up, yeah.
All right, so, okay. Wah, wah. All right, folks, have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.